They come on down, but you're already there.
I'm up. I'm here.
Good morning, Jeff.
Morning, Gary.
Hey, I left you a little extra time. I tried to, rush it through.
I like that. Now I have to do an extra story or something, or like make a bunch more dad jokes.
I like
it. Yeah. So I don't know. I'll come up with some jokes. Okay. Have you heard the? No. So I wanted to start today by saying that at this time of year, I'm always looking at the past. I'm looking at what the year's already been like, and I kind of like going through the year and saying to myself, what have I done? What can I do differently? But more importantly, what are all those times that I thought this isn't going to work out? Things aren't going to work out this time. God, you don't understand. It's finally off the rails, and then He takes me and rescues me from those times. And as I was thinking about this message, I think I came up with in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 times throughout the year that I can remember that I finally got to the point where I went, there's too much, God. There's just too much. That you've given me too much this time. And He's not only widened my own shoulders to accept the too much, but then He's gone, you don't understand. It's not just you lifting this, it's me lifting this along with you. So I love this time of year, and honestly, the gift of Thanksgiving, to me anyway, is about those kind of times. So I kind of wanted to dive into that. This will be my last kind of day on Proverbs, and then we're going into the Advent season. We're diving into the story of Christ, maybe in a little bit of a different way than you've ever heard before. And I know speakers, pastors, preachers love to say that, but I think mine's pretty special. So anyway, I don't know. It might be just normal, but I thought it was pretty cool, and I think you'll like it when we dive into the Advent season. Been working on that for a little bit, but today is our last day in Proverbs. This week I've just been going all throughout Proverbs and looking at, because after the part that we've been reading, Solomon just starts giving out advice. And it's almost like he's throwing a bunch of darts at a dartboard, and they all strike home. They're all good stuff. And some of them are even really funny. And he makes little jabs at society, or he'll basically have this proverb that eloquently tells kids to be silent when someone that knows more than you is talking. And I love those kind of things. And they're just peppered throughout Proverbs. So I encourage you this week to go through Proverbs and just take a look at some of those. They're kind of things that are good things to print off, put on your fridge, use as the background to your screen or your phone or something like that. Just things to live by and stuff. And there's been a couple that have been driving this week for me, but I won't get into that. I just encourage you to do that throughout the next week. I want to start on Proverbs 16. But before I actually read this, a story came to mind immediately when I was thinking about this year and the times this year when things have gone pretty much almost off the rails, and I've gone, well, this is it, God. And it's kind of funny that I always, in that sense, get a little tiny thought in the back of my head. And the thought in the back of my head is, have things ever gone off the rails completely? Have we ever not made it? And in my life, have I ever faced financial ruin, complete loss of all job opportunities, every last thing, that kind of stuff? Has anything ever gone completely wrong, completely off the rails? And the answer is no. No, of course not. In fact, sometimes I'm brought toward the edge of certain things, like the edge of sanity, the edge of sleep, running out of creativity in my job and teaching and that kind of stuff, and then God kind of goes, okay, now you know how to handle that, and pulls me back. And it's really funny that way, and all of a sudden now it just widens your shoulders just a little bit more to accept the next thing, because God has a purpose for all of our lives, and I think that Proverbs is trying to tell us that. Now, when I was thinking about that, I actually thought of a little situation that actually was a really tiny situation, but ended up being, I think, a huge thing for the kingdom. This time of year, last year, we took the 6th graders to outdoor school. This year we're going in spring. And last year at outdoor school, first of all, we go up near Mount Hood Village, and Welch's. And as we were up in Welch's last year, I learned that, so in previous years, by the way, it has dumped rain all day, every day, and it almost gets inside of your head. You walk outside, it's raining. You go back inside after being outside and stuff. Everything you own is wet. The entire world is wet. And the word, sorry, those of you that hate this word, the word moist applies to everything. Everything is moist. Think about the word moist. Anyway, but you go throughout your day and like, you go to the mess hall and it's like dumping. And finally I got to the point where I asked a counselor and I went, does it ever not rain? And she's like, oh yeah, you should have come in the fall. So we went in the fall last year and it wasn't raining. And I went, oh my goodness. I brought 2 rain jackets and it never rained once. It was the greatest thing on earth. Anyway, it was actually sunny too. And we actually were able to do a lot with the kids. But these are kids, a lot of the kids that I work with come from not the greatest family lives. Families pretty disconnected. I won't go into detail on that. I don't think I really can. But one thing that we decided to do changed everything last year. The last meal at camp is a pretty special deal. They usually give out awards to, you find kids that excel at outdoor school, that maybe in the classroom have kind of been a harder individual or just, haven't found a way in which they excel. And at outdoor school, in some sense, all of a sudden they just come alive and they understand it all. And they decide, even as a 6th grader, I've had kids come to me and say, Mr. Barrett, I've never wanted to go to college before. No one in my family ever went to college. Where do I go to college that I can learn about trees? And I love hearing that conversation because actually, selfishly, the first thing I say is Oregon State. But then the second thing I think is like, there's a career path for that. You can make a life in the forest, learning about trees, studying trees. You can do that. Oh my goodness, do you want to do that? And the kid looks at me like I've just changed everything about their perspective, but I haven't done it. It was the experience that did it. So that last meal is really important in that way. But the main counselor, the main guy in charge, comes to me, and me and a couple other guys, and we're setting up for the dinner, and he says, hey guys, so because this is so close to Thanksgiving, we decided to do some turkey and gravy and stuff, and some stuffing and everything like that, and we got to thinking, and we started talking, we're setting out silverware and things, and all of a sudden, we all come to the same idea at the same time. And we all go, wait a second, how many of these kids actually do Thanksgiving with anybody? And we started thinking about it, and we started thinking of names and thinking of kids and thinking of the families that we knew, and we kind of went, not many of them actually. Not many of these kids sit down with their family or somebody at a table ever. I'm not even talking about Thanksgiving anymore. Day to day, do you know how many kids don't actually sit with a family to eat dinner? Maybe they go home and mom and dad are working 2 jobs just to stay afloat, and maybe there's something left in the microwave for them to microwave. That's a very common thing. Maybe your home is a car. That's another very common thing. And these names and families and situations that we knew about just kept coming to mind and prompted us to do something about it. There were these giant, long tables, maybe about 10-foot long tables that all the kids sat at for dinner. We got an idea. We decided to push 2 tables together to make a huge table that would accommodate one person's entire cabin group. These cabins are pretty large. And we decided to do that all over the mess hall. Just decided to push tables together. I may have told this story. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself from last year. This just was really meaningful to me. We decided to put everything that the kids were going to eat. They weren't going to come up and get it cafeteria style. We decided to put it all in bowls and set it in the middle of each table. Do you get what's going on? Because that's something that kids don't ever not eat cafeteria style. A lot of kids that don't actually eat with their family. They don't have the they've never been taught table manners because there's been really no need to use them. There's never been food in the middle of a table that you're talking with somebody and you go, hey, could you please pass that never occurs. And so we thought, now is the time. And we put those all in the middle of the table. We then set everything with silverware and plates and everything you would need for a Thanksgiving feast. And we said to each other, today, we're going to throw these kids the Thanksgiving feast that they never had. I didn't know how that would work. In fact, I was kind of nervous about, I'm always nervous when I get a lot of kids in the same location, and there's 1 or 2 adults and stuff. I'm always like, who's going to realize, who's going to be the kid that goes guys, we could get away with so much right now? Who's going to be that kid? And to me, this kind of prompted that. So I was kind of nervous at the same time as being really happy about the idea, but we didn't know what was going to happen. We had no idea how this was going to impact anybody. And we were surprised. First cabin group comes in. They all sit down. They all go, "Why is the food in the middle of the table?" Then when everybody was seated, we explained, "Hey, here's how you pass food around a table." The kids went, "All right, I get it, you know." And then we explained that we are having Thanksgiving. So the first thing that we want to do, everybody, as you get your first dish, I think the first dish was turkey. As you get the plate with the first dish and you are dishing yourself up, you must tell your team something that you are thankful for this week. Something that happened this week that you are thankful for. And we just started the dinner that way. And I sat down with a cabin group and I just started listening to all these kids' conversations and stuff. And for the first time, I saw kids that, had you seen this kid in another light, you would have thought to yourself, this kid's trouble. They're just making a lot of bad decisions and stuff. For the first time, I heard what their heart was thankful for. And as they started opening up the valve of that heart and letting that out, all of a sudden it just started flowing, and I'm thankful for this. And I'm thankful for you, man. I'm thankful for that I made a new friend. I made a new friend this week. And I'm thankful for, we were down at the river today and we saw some salmon. I'm thankful for salmon. I had no idea what their life was all about and stuff. And it just kept going. And it went all dinner. These kids just were telling each other what they were thankful for all dinner long. I'm holding back tears. This was fantastic. I've never seen anything like this. God used this dinner in such a miraculous way. In fact, the kids didn't want to leave. They got done eating and they just talked. And some of them were asking around, like asking the adults, like, is it okay that we're talking to each other right now? Like, can we talk this much? We're still sitting here. Don't we need to get up and do something else? And the adults at every table were like, no, you don't need to do anything. We're just sitting, we're just being a family right now. I heard the question a couple times. Is this what a family does? Is this what a family does? Is this what a family's about? Wow. They got up and we were getting ready to take them outside, and it was rec time after that. And I was like, well, what do you do after Thanksgiving? I grabbed a football. And a whole bunch of guys were following me and stuff, and we were heading to, the boys were going to go play in a different area and stuff. And we had this giant gym that was set up in the back of the property, and it had some lights on and that kind of thing. And I just got out a bunch of footballs and basketballs and stuff, and they're like, hey, Mr. Barrett, so what are we going to go do right now? And I said, hey, well, this is what a lot of families do this after Thanksgiving. You go play sports. You go hang out. That's what families do. Wow. And so we started throwing a football, and oh my goodness, that was the best night all fall. And I just went, I have no idea where any of these ideas came from. To me, it all came from God. God used people. As far as I know, there were two Christians on staff at North Marion that day that were in that building, and I believe God used us and used everybody around us, and God used a moment that it wasn't powered by outdoor school, it wasn't about outdoor education, it wasn't about education at all. God used that moment to touch the lives of some kids and gain a foothold in some lives. And I don't know how many believers there were in that entire place worth of kids, but it touched so many kids' lives that day. And God used something as simple as a meal, as simple as something just sitting down and consuming things, putting things in your mouth, that just changed everything for these kids. So I asked myself again, as I was reviewing the year, when has God not made every situation to His glory? We start on verse 1 here. To human beings belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. All persons' ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. So you do this. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. The Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster. The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished. Through love and faithfulness, sin is atoned for. Through the fear of the Lord, evil is avoided. When the Lord takes pleasure in anyone's way, He causes their enemies to make peace with them. And he caused a bunch of kids that day that some of them were even at odds with me and decided that Mr. Barrett's no good, he represents authority, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, all of these kids that wanted to be my enemy made peace with me that day. I saw this passage lived out last year as I was looking over my year in review. Now we know that Solomon had a pretty important father, so I want to go to something that his father said. And I couldn't fit it all on the screen. It is a very long psalm, one of my favorite psalms. I just want to read it for you right here now. Now to back up, King David, the writer of this psalm, to the outsider that just knows his story, you're reading the first sentence there, give thanks to the Lord for he is good. If you are a pessimist and you are looking at the man, David the man, you know that this man, on paper, has almost nothing to be thankful for at various points in his life. You know, you can use two hands to count all the times when things have almost gone off the rails. The time when Saul gets really bitter and jealous of him and thinks he's after his crown and he has to hide out in a cave. And God actually gives him one moment when Saul takes a break in a cave. And I don't have time to go into this right now, but it's an awesome story about how he actually walks up to Saul and he sees his enemy in the cave right there. And God prompts him, ooh, don't kill him. Don't do it. I'm in control. It's just so powerful, the life of David and how all of the things in David's life were orchestrated by God. And that is the lens in which I read this. So he says, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, in Psalm 118. His love endures forever. Let Israel say, his love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, his love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, his love endures forever. When hard pressed, I cried to the Lord. He brought me into a spacious place. The Lord is with me, I shall not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? The Lord is with me, he is my helper. I look in triumph on my enemies. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All the nations surrounded me, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They surrounded me on every side, but in the name of the Lord I cut them down. They swarmed around me like bees, but were consumed as quickly as burning thorns. In the name of the Lord I cut them down. As this soaks into your heart and as you kind of take rest in these words, I'm emphasizing a point that he is making. And all the victories that David ever had, and all the times when he said, that worked out, he never once says, look how brilliant I am. Look how brilliant I am, God. Look at what I've done with just a little bit. Now it's kind of funny, you can give thanks to God by still doing this, and I do this a lot. I always say, thanks God for all of my intellect, and look what I've done with all that you have given me. Look at what I have done. And that's usually when God pulls the rug out from under my feet, and I hit the floor in life, and God says to me, what have you done, mere mortal? I am God. So I love what David is doing here. In verse 13 he says, I was pushed back and about to fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die but live and will proclaim what the Lord has done. And I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit just because this is a really long psalm, but in verse 28 it says this. You are my God, and I will praise you. You are my God, and I will exalt you. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his love endures forever. So as you take a look at your year in review, there are a few things that could happen. The things that happened for me was, of course, recognizing that story and all the times that God has pulled me back from something. But as you get to the times of Thanksgiving, it's important to realize how powerful this God is. How powerful the God of these two men truly is, and how much he can take a hold of your life and set your path straight. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because we're entering a time of both deep thanks, but then all of a sudden it's going to be contrasted really quickly this upcoming week with a time of deep materialism. And you know what I mean. It's a little practice we like to call Black Friday. And as you've been surveying your news feeds, if you're on social media, they've been doing this a lot. I've been told, I'm not on it, but they've been doing this a lot. Even Amazon's been actually sending emails to me over the past week, like, hey, did you know that Black Fridays are coming? And Cyber Monday, all that good stuff. There's now, I'm pretty sure they're wanting to dedicate like an entire week to buying stuff. Pretty soon. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if you have some great deals you want to take hold of and embrace and that kind of stuff, if you've got a tradition or something like that, that's not the problem. That's not the biggest problem I'm trying to say. It's kind of funny in the United States for anyone that's not a part of our culture to come in and see a time of Thanksgiving and they go, wow, this is great, you guys do this, and then the next day, all of a sudden, here we go. And you have to be on your game for Black Friday. And most of the year, my wallet is not on its best game by the time Black Friday rolls around, you know what I mean? And you get to that time of Christmas and you kind of are looking at your bank account, sort of like you're looking at an oncoming car that is about to just cause havoc. And you're kind of looking at your bank account and going to yourself, will this actually work out this year? Now, these gentlemen right here, of course, never probably had to put up with Black Friday. In fact, they never did, because it's kind of the ushering in of the Christmas season. But as we start Advent, it's important to realize that the gift of God is not so much materialistic things, and not so much He's going to give you wiggle rooms that you can go and do all of this stuff. What I'm trying to say is the gift of God is knowing that you serve a God so powerful, in fact, that the entire season should be dedicated toward Him. It actually takes an entire Advent season, or it should, in order to actually understand the gift of God's power being injected into humanity at that point. And the funny thing is, now I'm going to make way less sense than I just made, because I'm going to go all the way to the book of Revelation. All the way to the book of Revelation for this. At this time of year, if you at all are prompted to take a look at your own bank account and go, ooh, right before Christmas and that kind of thing, and you're kind of wondering how things are going to be met, and you're kind of wondering how should my life revolve around God when I have all these other obligations, and we have the other thing that gets divided is your schedule, right? Every day you have to do something else. During Advent, the Advent calendar is almost it's almost kind of funny how we celebrate God on one hand, and then we go and we have so many other obligations and work parties and functions and family get-togethers and things like that. It's hard to stop and think about the power of God and the absolute jaw-dropping, mighty power of God. So to do that, I'm actually going to go to Revelation. Sorry, I really should have had this up. And I'm going to go to Revelation 19, verse 11. And in my Bible it says, the heavenly warrior defeats the beast. And without knowing anything about the story, you just need to know that in Revelation, previously, there is a passage that talks about two giant dragons coming up from a vast sea. One of them is representative of the devil, and the other one is representative of the devil's emissary, the Antichrist, or more likely called. And and they are described in jaw-dropping detail, sort of like a Lord of the Rings is pretty much the best way I can come close to this. If you've ever watched the movies or read the books, The Lord of the Rings, the dragon is kind of, it looks like it's a character out of those. Not even Narnia. This looks, way too PG-13 to be anything that C.S. Lewis wrote, this dragon. But after the dragon, there's a giant battle, and this is what it says. I saw heaven and earth standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and wages war. His eyes are like blazing fire, and on his head are many crowns. He has a name written on it that no one knows but himself. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of God. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses and dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Coming out of his mouth is a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of the God Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh, he has this name written: King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I don't know about you, but when I was reading this for the first time, the imagery was just immense. The power of the living God. This is a God who gives us the wealth and the abundance to celebrate Thanksgiving, to look at your year in review and say, look at all the times when God has come through for me. It is also the God that we're going to celebrate with Advent. And this year, if you haven't done this before, we always we have traditions revolving around the birth of Christ. We talk about the baby Jesus, the Virgin Mary. We talk about Joseph. We talk about the Magi. We talk about the trek through Egypt. But I think there's one thing that we miss right after Thanksgiving. This is what I would encourage you to do. Right after Thanksgiving, once you've given thanks to this God of awe and mighty power, recognize the fear of the Lord. For according to Solomon, the fear of the Lord is his peace. To humans belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. All persons' ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. I'm going to lay out before the Lord this year my entire celebration of Advent. I'm going to take a look at all of December, and I'm going to ask God, what would you have me do? What would you have me do in this last part of the year? Would you have me help someone in need? Would you have me feed someone that does not have food? Would you have me say something to someone that needs me to say something to them? For all the times, God, that you have helped me out, and all the times that I've given thanks to you, I am going to commit, in the name of the fear of the Lord, to understand you've got me and work toward fulfilling your kingdom. So that's what I would encourage you to do. I'd encourage you to meditate on just the awe and the power and the might of God, who has gotten you through this year, who has made your plans, who's laid out everything in front of you, and then ask him what he would have you do with this Christmas season. So let's pray. God, I thank you for the might and the power with which you exist, and all of the ways in which that you have laid out my path straight in front of me this year, and all the times that I've cried out to you and you have said, it's okay, I've got it. God, I thank you for the upcoming season of Advent, and I just thank you that you are the one that we serve. We don't serve all of the material things in the world, but that you are the one that we give thanks to, and you are the one that we uplift, and that, God, that's a different message than the world gives. It's a far different message than everyone's going to be pushing this year. I thank you for that, and I thank you that we can give that message to the world. Amen.